Hello and welcome to the Sandro Forte podcast. Over the many years I've been running a successful business, I've met, directly or indirectly, many successful people from entrepreneurs, sports stars, celebrities, and dare I say, even royalty. So what makes someone successful? Do we even know what success is? And the all-important question, can we create it for ourselves? This podcast series invites a diverse group of people to share their insights, their wisdom, and the things they've learned along the way. Ross Bernstein is the best-selling author of nearly 50 sports books, including The Code, which inspired the 2013 feature film The Last Gladiators. As well as being a successful author, he's an influential business speaker that has attracted huge audiences across the globe. Ross has spent over 20 years studying the achievements of championship teams, noting the elements he believes that have made them so successful, and he's also researched over 1,000 professional athletes to look at their winning formulas. Motivation, trust, morals, and work ethic are just a few of the key factors that make those teams successful. This wealth of research and knowledge is passed on by Ross to organisations looking for peak performance by encouraging dynamic leadership and creating a culture of excellence. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome our guest today and a very good friend of mine, Ross Bernstein. Ross, welcome.
Hey, great to be with you, Sandro.
It's fabulous to have you on the show. So I have to start by asking you, Ross, seventh continent. You've just spoken in your seventh continent. There's not many professional speakers, because that's what you are after all. Not many professional speakers who can attest to the fact that they've spoken in Antarctica. So just tell us a little bit about your most recent journey.
It was a lot of fun. I had a couple speaking engagements in Santiago, Chile, and I was able to bring my wife and daughter, and we were able to explore South America, and we planned a trip down to Antarctica. It's my client was the cast and crew of a luxury research vessel, so I was able to create my gig on the seventh continent. There's not a lot of them down there, but it's pretty fascinating. You fly in and then you take a boat back, and it's amazing. We spent a day on Shackleton's Island, and I'll tell you what, though, that penguin poop smell, you never really get used to it. There were more than 1 million penguins on this little island, but it was amazing. And like you, being able to travel the world is my passion. So to be able to do it, and to do it with my wife and my kid, who've also been on 7 continents with me, is kind of the lifestyle brand that I've kind of created. And it was really, really a lot of fun.
And I was about to say, you are one of the most well-traveled families, not just you personally, but your wife and daughter, who are lovely, by the way. They travel so many different places. You must have, umpteen passports filled with visas and various stamps between you. So no, kudos to you, because it's great to, I know you're a really great family man, so it's lovely that you travel the world with them as well.
Well, one of our favorite trips was coming to England to see you and your amazing family, and that's what it's all about, right? The journey. So, and that's why I love you. You and I share that same passion.
Well, thank you. So let's get into this, because loads and loads of wisdom and amazing things for you to share, I know, because I've listened to you speak numerous times and you never disappoint. So what inspired you? I have to ask, this is, I guess, a start question. What started this passion, Ross, for researching the success of teams and athletes?
Great question. My passion early in life was sports, and I grew up in a little small town in Minnesota, which is central U.S. for some of your listeners, across the pond, as we like to say. And I wasn't very good at sports, but I loved sports and played whatever I could, and had 2 big brothers who'd beat me up, and we would just play sports. And when I got to college, I wound up writing my very first book. It was called Gopher Hockey by the Hockey Gopher. My dream was to play ice hockey at the University of Minnesota, the home of the Golden Gophers. And I lasted about 5 minutes, and I got cut and became the team mascot. And I wound up writing a book about it, and that launched my career. And it was a a situation where even though I wasn't good enough to play, I wanted to be a part of it and make my career in it. So I feel really fortunate that I've been able to kind of make my life's work of studying the great ones and what it is that makes them great, and being able to interview athletes and being a member of the media. So I get to have access to cover them and write about them. And now as a speaker, I get to talk about them like you, about what it is that's in their DNA that makes them unique. So I've just been on this crazy journey, being able to tie sports into what I do. And honestly, I've never really had a job my whole life. This is kind of what I do.
Wow. So loads and loads of interviews. Any particularly memorable ones? I mean, must have a favorite, surely.
It's interesting. I've been fortunate to be on a lot of the major networks and things. I love all of them. For me, it was interesting. My previous life, everyone, you're an amazing professional speaker, and that's how we connected. But you're also an author, and of course, amazing financial services business. But for me, my previous life, and we all have a previous life before we become professional speakers, you have to do something before you can hit the circuit, right? And for me, it was obviously writing books. And when I would write books, being on TV, being on the radio, wasn't to say, hey, look at me, I'm on TV. It was to sell books. So, my speaker friends are always fascinated how I was able to be on TVs. And it's like, you don't understand. If I didn't sell a book, I didn't eat. So that was always my motivation, was to primarily for Christmas, for Father's Day, to shill books, to go out and, and my main audience was women. I learned that early on. They were my audience. They were buying them for their husbands and sons and brothers and uncles, and they were Christmas gifts. So that was always a huge part of my model, was to do as much TV as possible to tell stories. I mean, you and I are storytellers. So to be able to tell a story about a new book and about what I learned and to share it, that's what it was all about. So, like you, it's been a fun run, and I always enjoy doing interviews, and being on with you today is fantastic. Getting to just, share stories. That's what we do.
And just for the record, when we talk about you writing books, we're talking about nearly 50 books. Where on earth do you find the time to write 50 books?
Well, that's, like I said, that's what I did. I mean, that was my job. I would churn out, 2 or 3 a year, and they were always on deadline, because I learned I always had to have them done by November so that I could pump them out for Christmas and promote them. And that's when people bought books. So, of course, that model has changed now significantly, but I just kept trying to find new ideas. And eventually, once you get established, then a lot of the celebrity athletes would come to you and want you to write their biography or whatever. So it was a journey. But honestly, I've shifted. I haven't written a book now in a few years, and I'm working on a new one. It's a business book, but I really decided that I'm not in any rush to finish it. I'm really enjoying speaking. I speak at about 120 conferences per year. And until my daughter graduates from high school and goes off to college, I just didn't want to be out in that racket anymore, out promoting and doing signings and that. So I've really shifted, and that's a big part of what I talk about disruption. I mean, the book business has died. I mean, it's a completely different animal now, with ebooks and online content, and typical books are young people don't know what the hell to do with them. They look at them and they try and swipe them like an iPad. They don't know what to do with them. So it's changed, but it's people still love content, but they're getting it in different ways now, like a podcast. So it's quite fascinating how we get our information, but I think we've all had to monetize it differently.
I haven't even asked you any questions properly yet, but already I've picked up some. This is what I love about you, Ross. I've already picked up 2 or 3 really good takeaways that you may not even be aware of. So, you set out to write a book, and the first thing I heard was, you were selling them to women. That was your target audience, which I think a lot of people may not even stop to consider who their target audience is. And the other thing that you mentioned was getting them written by November, so you could sell them as Christmas gifts, which, again, a lot of people who embark on a goal to maybe write a book or do something in business or life don't really think about the end game and that deadline. So that was really fascinating. And the other thing I just want to pick up on, because I hear these 3 letters in almost every presentation you give, and it's the letters DNA. So I guess my first question is, in all your experience from studying, superstars in the world of sport, is success, is talent something you're born with, Ross, or is it something that you develop?
Wonderful question. I think it's both. I mean, I think there's certain athletes, the Michael Jordans of the world, if you will, the Messis, that are, that are just born with incredible talent. But I think that, for the most part, it's developed. I think when you get to play professional sports, everyone is incredibly talented. Within a 90 percentile, they're, running, jumping, dribbling a ball, whatever it might be. But I think it comes down to work ethic and how bad they want it. And that's really the difference. And it's fascinating. It really is studying roles and certain people that are, someone like a Neymar, who's an incredible goal scorer, as opposed to, a grinder defenseman, a center midi who maybe just found a role doing something different, yet carved out a 20-year career, made millions. So there's no one right way to do it. I just love studying what makes people unique and how they find their path. And I think it is kind of in your DNA to want to be able to do different things and to be able to learn new things. So it's a fascinating journey for sure to study them. And it's a never ending pile of new athletes, new coaches, people that succeed, people that fail, people that lose their moral compass. As a speaker, I talk a lot about, winning with integrity and that fine line between cheating and gamesmanship in sports. And that's the other thing is how bad you want to win, yet how important it is for you to win the right way and to win with integrity. You know that from speaking, from certainly being in financial services, where every week we hear about a new company that's, lost their way and has problems because they want to take a shortcut. So it's fascinating, whatever line of business you're in, to see how people do it and what's in their DNA. I mean, I know for you, you're one of the most modest guys I know, but you're incredibly humble, but you're incredibly giving. I know you're up for a national mentoring award, and that's no coincidence. It's because you're all about serving and giving and helping others. And that's in your DNA to be an amazing person. And that's why people gravitate to you. You're magnetic. And it's for me, it's fascinating to study the why.
You have me blushing, Ross. So thank you, first of all, for your friendship, but also all the things you bring to so many people's lives, including mine. So you've identified all these traits. And what I've understood from you is that DNA isn't necessarily, Lionel Messi doesn't appear in the world as a talented footballer. But what he does have in his DNA is a desire, a passion to succeed. And that then leads him to a course of action, which through practice, in this example, takes him to the world stage and the superstar footballer that we know he is. I think I've got that right. So, in terms of people succeeding, we hear a lot about that, but you've also identified, I think, what common mistakes people make. So just, if you wouldn't mind, just share some of those pitfalls, the things that stop people, the inertia, if you like, that stops people getting to where they want to get. Because we've all met somebody with a plan, right? And unfortunately, there are very, very many well-educated failures. There are people in life who started life with a plan and never really got out of their chair, so to speak. So what are those common mistakes that stop people achieving success? Let's flip it upside down.
Well, I think that, at the end of the day, in sports, it's fascinating. Everyone gets told at some point that they're no longer welcome to play the game, right? At some point, we're all told, you know what, we got to let you go. It happened to me a lot sooner than I wanted to, but everyone here, we see that we're on the precipice of the Super Bowl, and here's Tom Brady, looking at 42 years of age, and this guy he's the GOAT, the greatest of all time. I mean, he's still pushing, and he'll leave the game on his own terms, but at some point, everyone gets told that their better days are behind them. So it's about maximizing as much as you can in as short a time as you can, and that leads us sometimes to take shortcuts. And I think hubris is what eventually gets a lot of us, where we want to win so badly, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. It's once you've achieved success, especially in sales and in business, and then you don't have it makes us a lot more desperate to re-achieve it. So I wrote this series of books called The Code. It's about these unwritten rules, unspoken rules in sports, about these codes. And if you break these rules, then there's consequences. And in hockey, that leads to fighting. And in baseball, it leads to getting a 100-mile-an-hour fastball up. We call that chin music, where there's consequences for cheating or disrespecting someone. And it's the same in business. And I think that, eventually people, they realize, hey, you know what, I can take a shortcut that I can still get the same, end game, but I can take a shorter route. And eventually that catches up with you. And that's probably what gets most of us.
Mm. So what would you say, therefore, 50 sports books, travel the world, 7 continents, 120 gigs a year, and every one of them fabulous. I'm going to come back to the way you recognize people in a moment, because that is something that I stand back and admire with great fascination. But what are the key characteristics that you've discovered? I know that's a very, very general subject because everyone's different, but if we could come up with, half a dozen things that the listeners of this podcast could really start to focus on, the key characteristics that make certain people great, what would they be?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I think it's cliche, but I think it starts with passion. I mean, I think that unless you love what you do, you're going to suck at it. And you don't necessarily have to love to sell life insurance per se, but you got to love the outcome. You got to love the fact that you're helping someone. You got to love the fact that that when you're selling a product that maybe someone doesn't want, but that they need it, and that in the end, how that's going to really change their family and change their trajectory and give them peace of mind. So I think you've first got to figure out what you love to do. I mean, I love sports. Great. You and 8 billion other people, right? How do you make a career at it? It's not like there's a job posting for, get to speak all over the world and write all these books. So I think you've just got to be creative. You've got to be, you got to just find new ways to do what you want to do. There's no rules anymore. And I wrote my first book I was a senior in college, and I leveraged my graduate school money. I had 2 older brothers who went on to get Ivy League MBAs. And this is what my mom and dad wanted me to do. They worked very hard at our family furniture store so I could get my MBA. And I wanted to work in sports. So I begged my mom and dad to let me write this book about Gopher hockey with my graduate school money. And, they told me this is going to be the biggest failure of your life. And they were like, what are you doing? But I was determined, and I did it, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I just said, I don't want to follow that path. I want to do my path, and succeed or fail. This is what I want to do. And it cost a lot of money to write and publish the book. Today, I see parents all the time and say, my kid wants to work in sports. What can they do? And it's like, are you kidding me? You can start a podcast. You can create an online magazine. You can do anything. The iPhones and apps. I mean, it's incredible. The playing field today has been completely leveled. The barrier to entry is zero. Anyone today can do anything, and the cream will rise to the top. If you want to do something, go do it. Shut up. Go do it. There's no rules. I had to, spend tens of thousands of dollars to initially just start my dream, to even think about it. Today, none of that matters. Kids today can go on YouTube and learn something and perform, and boom, they don't need a record label. They can just do it. So I think starting with passion, figuring out what it is you really love to do, and then the why and the how. How do you get there? How do you start? And there's no rules. You see people all the time that are just able to find new ways of achieving success. And that's fascinating to me. Just, there's no one right way. Just find your way and go shut up and do it. Don't tell me why you can't. Just go do it.
Wonderful. Do you know what? If we stop the podcast right here and now, people would still have enough takeaways from this last 15 minutes. So that was great. Thank you. So thinking about successful people, because I'm going to I'll just touch on one thing that I've found really fascinating about you, Ross. And this is not being sycophantic in any way, but every time you do a gig, you post a lovely message that highlights your experience on a social media channel like LinkedIn. The importance of recognizing people, those that have opened a door, given you opportunity, how important is that?
Well, thank you. For me, that has been a fascinating journey for me. I'm not a social media guy. It's interesting. I'm not on Facebook. I mean, I have a static page. I don't have any friends. I don't do Instagram. I don't do any social media except for LinkedIn. That's my platform where I've luckily early on, I started linking with people. That was something that I could do. And I've got an amazing network of executives, and I always try and link with people. And I never try and sell them anything, but I only use it for good, not evil. That's what I say. And yes, every time I do a gig, I want to get a great picture of the room and the audience and me on stage presenting, because that's what I do. That's my passion. And then afterwards, I make a post saying, I want to thank this amazing company. I want to thank them for having me, for the people, for brag about the company. Here's what they do, and to hopefully get them some gigs. I want to introduce them to some other of my clients. I'm all about karma and helping people. And what it does is a couple things. Number one, it shows the world that, hey, I'm busy. I'm working. This is, the only people that I care to impress on LinkedIn are event planners, corporate meeting planners, CEOs, VPs of sales, people who hire me like you to come speak at their annual sales conference or leadership conference. So I want them to see me on a big stage and hopefully inspiring people and doing what I do. I want them to see a positive message. So in a sense, that's what we call a humble brag, where, yeah, there's me up on stage doing my thing. But at the end of the day, it's really me acknowledging them. And that's what it's all about. It's about acknowledging them and helping others, getting them a warm referral. I mean, Sandro, I owe so much of my life to you. The reason I can honestly say that I've traveled to 7 continents, honest to God, is because of one person, and it's you. Because you and I met at a National Speakers Association conference, I don't know, years ago, 6, 7 years ago, and you were very involved in a group called $1 Million Roundtable, which, if your listeners don't know, it's the preeminent group for life insurance salespeople around the world. Sandro was involved at an extremely high level for many years, choosing their main stage platform speakers. Every year they vet over 1,000 speakers. I was lucky enough to come to Toronto and present with Sandro. They brought me back to Hong Kong. Nearly 10,000 people in the audience. And from there, all the people that I've met have brought me to Australia and New Zealand and South Africa and Peru and Croatia and Singapore. And it's amazing being able to travel the world because of this amazing organization. So I can trace all of that travels and success and fun and amazement back to one relationship that I made. And because you recommended me. And here I am in March, I'm going to be with another huge company because of a referral and a recommendation from you. I mean, how awesome is that? Just to be able to share, and I try and share with you, you try and share with me. It's all based on the laws of karma. If I get you a gig, it's, beers are on you. That's just how it works. And it's just it's just the epitome of working smarter versus harder. And I'm so grateful for our friendship because, you go speak and you make all these great relationships and then they're kind of gone. And one cool thing is you and I have been, we hit it off. We fell in love and we're buddies. And now our spouses and families know each other and we get to see each other. And that's what's so great about this journey is every now and then you get to meet someone who really impacts your life and made a difference. And so I'd like to say that I've learned so much about giving and serving others from you. And I know that was a very long answer to a very short question, but I like to acknowledge my clients, I like to acknowledge my friends, people who've helped me, and I want to acknowledge you for helping me and to say thank you because you're an awesome person.
Again, you're being very kind and actually far too modest because I don't think I even figure in your career of success, Ross. But notwithstanding, I'm going to use this podcast as a testimonial in future. So thank you. So I guess that answers the next question because I think one of the things I wanted to find out from you was, in your experience, do you find that successful people are willing to share their secrets, or are they the ones that keep their cards quite close to their chest? And from what I'm hearing is that, the really, really good guys and ladies of the world are the ones that normally want to reach up, reach down and help others on the basis that life is a revolving door. It's something I've always believed in. I know you believe in it. So just want to, to clarify for the listeners that very much is your view that you reap what you sow.
Well, I would like to think that that's everyone's view, but I will tell you that for 90+% of people, it's not. It's the opposite. I think the reason you and I connected, Sandro, and became really genuine friends was because we both share that view, and we do like to help each other genuinely and with no strings attached. Most people don't want to share their clients. I mean, every time I keynote a conference, I can't wait to find my replacement. I'm not, that's why clients like me. I'm never trying to sell them a bunch of crap. I'm not going, oh, hire me to do this and let me come in and sell you my consulting coaching practice and a million books and DVDs and online universities. Hey, God bless all the other speakers that do that stuff, but it ain't me. So I don't do it. And as a result, that gives me a leg up in the sense that I become friends with those people. If I've, over delivered on their expectations, that gives me permission to recommend someone else to help them. I'm never trying to hound them. It creates an interesting challenge for me as a speaker. Every year I start with a blank calendar, like you got to fill your diary, as you say, every year. And I start with 0 dates a year. There's nothing is promised to me, and I got to fill it up. So it would be great to be able to think, I could get one client that could fill it up 20 times, but that's not what I do. I'm going to go work with a client and that's it. Maybe if I'm lucky, they might bring me back for a different division or something else down the road. But I'm one of those guys where I have one topic. I don't try and say, I'm an expert in 20 things. I do one thing and I can morph it from a 30-minute talk to an 8-hour talk, and I can break it into parts and pieces. But that's really what I've focused on. So I'm never trying to tell them. And I will tell you, that's been a massive differentiator, is to just do that and then give and then share. Find them a replacement. I'll tell them right away, look, tell me about your event. If I'm not a right fit, I'll find someone who is. And I mean that. And I think that to be able to share and give unconditionally, I think that it's the greatest gift you can give, a referral, helping someone to be of service to someone else. And by the laws of karma, if it works, it comes back. But I think you have to align yourself with people that share that. It's in their DNA. Otherwise, you're just going to be in a give relationship, and no one likes to be around takers. That's why you're so awesome, man, because you're a giver in everything that you do in life. And that's why you're magnetic and people love you. It's the truth.
So even more humbling. Thank you. This isn't rehearsed, is it? I just want everyone to know this. We did not have a conversation and said, let's big each other up for half an hour. So let's move on. Characteristics of success. In all the research you've done over 20 years, Ross, has it changed? Are the fundamental principles of success and all those great things you've been talking about, have they always been there? Has life got in the way? Have things changed in your experience? Or, fundamentally, are the characteristics of success still the characteristics of success?
I think that the basic hallmarks have stayed true. Work ethic, drive, the cliche things. But I think that technology has really, really changed. I think that it's been fascinating. The athletes have gotten bigger, stronger, faster. Technology is amazing. I just did a really cool conference in Brussels about trends in sports. It was a little bit of a leap to go a different direction for me, but it really kind of put me outside my comfort zone to talk about how, sports teams now are using, predictive analytics, and they're using AI, and the players are mic'd up and they're wired up, and there's RFID tags on balls and pucks and sticks, and you can measure everything, curvature of a football kick, or how many spins or rotations or heartbeat or core body temperature, how many kilometers the players run from the first half to the second half, everything is measurable. Using drones, in sports, they're called departments of decision sciences. I talk about this stuff in my presentation. It's fascinating. It changes constantly. As a member of the media with professional football and baseball and basketball and hockey, and studying teams and going behind the curtain to see how they use video and how they're using sleep science and neurologists and cryotherapy. And it's just incredible what's happening. I mean, there's an arms race of facilities and how teams are recruiting athletes. And then, of course, just how they're paying them so much more. So now you've got to get fans interested and to be able to come. And the biggest challenge the big aha moment for all of this is, how are we going to convince millennials and Gen Zers to attend, to pay for these services? How can we continue to pay these athletes these salaries and the millions and millions of dollars and euros to play? Because young people today are quite frankly, are more interested in social media and drone racing and esports. So that is going to be the biggest challenge. And I think you're seeing it now. Baseball is shortening games. Cricket is shortening games. Their matches. Everything now has become fan experience, making it an interactive experience. Millennials don't want to, in our world of speakers, they don't want to sit there for 2 hours listening to some guy talk about something. They want to be a part of the action. And I think every one of my clients that I speak to from the Fortune 500 companies around the world, this is their biggest challenge of hiring and keeping young people. And it's the same in sports. How do we hold their attention? How do we make it interesting for them and compelling for them? So unless you're solving that problem and whatever it is that you do, you better solve it or you're going to be out of business. Yeah. And sports is no different.
So what do you do? We know, don't we, from our experience of traveling, it's not a glamorous life sitting on a plane, even if you're in business class. What would you say in summary is the best part of public speaking? I know you've touched on a few things that you really value in terms of what you do and the lessons that you can teach people and the wisdom you can share and all that kind of stuff. But is there a way of summarizing the value and the joy you get from speaking all around the world?
Well, I love it. I love being on the main stage. I'm a keynoter, so that's kind of what I do, and that's a drug. And the only way to get that drug is to keep kicking ass and hopefully getting ass back, because I don't do any marketing for my business. Zero. It's all word of mouth. It's all referral. So if I don't do a great job on stage every week, then I don't work. So, having a previous life as an author, and which was not super glamorous, other than those rare moments when you do get to be on TV or at a book signing at a huge mall or whatever, it's a grind, and you work long hours and you deal with crap you don't want to deal with, and it's the same in speaking. People think, oh, you're on a main stage in Hong Kong, staying at the Ritz-Carlton. Yeah, but the next week, you're in some small town, having driven 4 hours in front of 30 people. And so you just grind, and they're not all, you're not a rock star every week. And that's the thing, you got to grind. And it's a term in sports, a grinder. And it's how I look at myself. I grind. For every Hong Kong, there's 50 Fargos, Sioux Falls, Winnipegs, Cedar Rapids, Omaha, and you grind and you go do it. And for every one of those small ones or low fee or under fee that you didn't get what you wanted, you do it and you give the same performance, and you hope you make a relationship and it leads to something great. And that's my model. And my passion is to be able to say, great, I'm not going to go to London alone. I'm bringing my wife and kid. And we're going to enjoy the journey. And when we're there, we're going to go to see a match at Chelsea. I know you're not. That's not your team, but we got to go see a match there. My kid plays soccer, as we like to call it here in the U.S., and see a proper football match, and take the train from King's Cross up to see my buddy Sandro. And that's what it's about. It's about these business tied into pleasure and experiences and journeys. And for me, that's what keeps me going. So that's what drives me, is to be able to say, okay, I'm going to grind. And there's weeks where I'm in, 5 states in 5 days and on 7 airplanes. And there's other weeks where, I'm spending the whole week in Lima, and we're going to go to Machu Picchu or wherever. And that's what I focus on. I don't focus on the grind. I focus on the outcome, on what this is going to lead to. Next week, it's Cancun, Mexico. And that's what I focus on, is the good stuff.
Well, and so on the subject of outcomes, unfortunately, time is against us. I have one more question for you, but if anyone listening to this podcast doesn't feel they've taken something away from it, then they probably need to subscribe to a different one. So my final question, I ask all my guests this, Ross, and you are no exception. Wealth of experience, a well-traveled man, a great father, fabulous friend. With all of that amazing experience, you've now got a mini version of Ross sitting on your knee. He's probably 15, 16 years old. Maybe this is the conversation you've already had with your daughter. And the question from them is, Daddy, knowing all the things that you know now, what single piece of advice would you give me in order to get as far as I can go in life?
That's a great question. I'm going to answer that with a little bit of a different twist. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she gets to travel the world, as I've told you, and she's a speaker. Speech is a high school event, and she's a state champion in speech. I'm really proud of her. She's amazing. And I remember we had a conversation where, she said, she wanted to be a professional speaker like Dad. And I said, that's great, but what are you going to do first? What do you mean? Well, you don't just get to become a professional speaker. You've got to have a life. You got to do something. You have to succeed. You have to fail. And I think the journey to get there is so much a part of it. So I wouldn't change any of that. But, a lot of times she's very into acting and theater. And every year we go to New York City. We spend a week. We go see Broadway shows, musicals. She loves it. It's her passion. And I very purposefully will always go to dinner at a restaurant in Times Square or in West End in London. And I want her to meet the waiters and waitresses, and we always tend to ask them, so what show are you in? And it's to show her that, that very few people get to make it to be the main stage, and that's all they do. Probably 90% of these actors and actresses, these thespians, they've got day jobs, and they have to grind, and they got to work. And I want her to see that. I want her to know that. And there's no shortcut. People, I think, see you as a top of the table, core to the table in your financial services business, a $1 million round table, incredible success as a main stage speaker. And I think that people need to know that there's no shortcut to the top. You've got to grind and you got to work. And so I'd tell myself, keep grinding. I'd probably be a little bit more efficient about how I did it, but I wouldn't change a whole lot. I love the path that I've taken, and I've made a lot of failures along the way. And every time I have a new massive failure, I go, great, something new to talk about in my speech. Right.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Wonderful.
That's what it's all
wonderful.
about.
Wonderful. Okay. Final thing. Very important, because you are a guy that a lot of people need to connect with. So how do they find out about you? You have a website, right? And your LinkedIn profile. Just tell us a little bit briefly about those two things so people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, rossbernstein.com is my website. I do have a Twitter handle. I think I've got 8 followers or friends. It's at Ross Bernstein, and LinkedIn. But I'm pretty accessible. Okay.
Well, how can I summarize this conversation? Let me say this: a pro, a great guy, a dear friend. It's been a real joy. Thank you so much for joining us. You've given us some real pearls of wisdom, and long may your fabulous career continue.
Love you, brother. See you soon.
Well, that was the Sandro Forte podcast, and what an amazing guest Ross Bernstein was. Remember, there are many more fantastic guests joining me over the coming weeks, so please make sure you subscribe if you want to pick up some great tips on success. Remember too, you can follow us on social media at Sandro's Podcast. That's Sandro's with an S, same on all channels. And we'd love to hear your stories, ideas, anecdotes, challenges, or whatever it is that motivates you. So please email me, hello@sandrospodcast.com. And if you can, please leave those reviews on iTunes so we know what you'd like more of in the future. Thank you.